And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Welcome to Chasing the Trophy Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Sanders, coming at you with the Week 4 Waiver Wire episode. This is coming at you a little late this week. I hope that everybody's been paying attention to the Facebook post if you have a chance, because Clay has posted the Waiver Wire picks already on there, but I'm going to go over some of them and why I chose them, this, that, and the other, and go over a couple of injuries also on this pod real quick, and just kind of catch you up on some of my, a little bit of an explanation for some of my picks. And then maybe some of these guys are still out there and you're still searching for who you need to pick up for this weekend. So, but we're going to go ahead and get kicked off with a word of prayer. Lord, just thank you for everything you bless us with, and just thank you for giving us this opportunity to just talk about this game and fellowship in your name, and just use this sport and this as a tool to reach more people for you and glorify your kingdom in some way that you see fit, Lord, and just use us for that. Just please be with Nora Kay. She continues her immunizations and getting her any treatments and checkups. Just keep your hand over her and Crew Tidwell as he's going through his treatments and everything, Lord. And just keep your hand on them as they're going through all that they are, Lord. We just thank you for all the blessings you've already given them and bestowed upon them through their process with their treatments and this phase of their life, Lord. Just continue to let them glorify your name. And also be with Mama T as she's kind of struggling right now, Lord, and just be with the Nord family and all of Mama T's family as you know their needs and their comforts, Lord. Just be with them and as they go throughout this time and this process of life, Lord. And just thank you for everything you continue to do. Just let us lead, guide, direct, and be a light for you and glorify your name. It's your name we pray, God. Amen. All right, guys. So it's the waiver wire edition. Obviously, all these picks were less than 60% owned in leagues before whenever I made this outline and released these names back on Tuesday. But anyway, so these are some. Also, before we get into this, if I better go ahead, Clay will get me. Thank our sponsors, Big Reed BBQ, Mimi's Children's Boutique, Crown Detailing. Thank you, guys. We appreciate y'all supporting us. Our title sponsor for this episode is Big Reed BBQ. They started as a family recipe in 1986. Their mild flavor is right on time, and their spicy is just enough heat. Owner Ken Reed and Director of Marketing Andre Leonard say you can get their sauce at Doug DeMona Farm and Feed, Time Shine Detail, the Salty Brahma, and the Equipment Store and Amazon. And I mean, guys, you got no excuse there. You know, support Big Reed BBQ. Get on Amazon, ship it straight to your door. Football season's upon us. Throw it on some pulled pork, some ribs, brisket, whatever you like. And just, support them because they support us. We really appreciate y'all, Big Reed BBQ. Coming up this week, we got our Start Sit Sleeper pod that will be coming out probably within the next couple of days just to get you ready for Sunday. Tonight's Thursday night football game is between the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. So obviously those guys won't be on our Start Sit Sleeper pod, but that should be an interesting game the way both the teams have been playing. So definitely be a one to look out for. And then we're going to go and jump right on into some news and injuries. Jamar Chase, a little banged up with a shoulder injury, practiced on Wednesday, should be good to go. A.J. Brown with his hamstring injury did not practice on Wednesday. They said, with them having a bye week coming up, I believe next week, I don't see them rushing him back to play, so I would imagine he'll be out, but keep an eye on his practice status. Alvin Kamara did not practice due to a rib injury and a hip pointer on Wednesday. Keep an eye on that, but if something like that happens, you might want to keep a lookout for Jamal Williams or more Taysom Hill. That definitely could be a big thing for the Saints there. Christian McCaffrey on IR, went to see a specialist about his Achilles tendinosis. Nothing really crazy there. He's just trying to get treatment to get back. So I know some people worried that it might be more serious because he was going to see somebody overseas, but I would not be alarmed. He's just trying to get any treatment he can to get back on the field as fast as possible, is what I've heard from multiple reports from beat writers. Marvin Harrison, limited Wednesday quad injury. I think that's just them manage his reps. He's probably a little banged up from the game. He'll be fine. Mike Evans, it was limited Wednesday due to a knee injury. They're just watching his reps. He'll be good to go. Sam Laporta ended up missing practice. Was diagnosed with low ankle sprain on Monday. I believe missed practice on Wednesday. So I would keep an eye on that just to make sure he plays. If he does, he hasn't been that productive. I expect them to get him more involved in the offense eventually, as Detroit's been struggling a little bit this year. George Kittle, with that hamstring injury, was limited Wednesday, so I expect him to be back, which is good news for San Francisco. Probably not so good news for Jawan Jennings, but it might not affect his value that much. Joe Mixon did not participate in practice Wednesday with that ankle injury. I really don't expect him to play this week. They labeled him week to week last week, and he's still not practicing as of Wednesday. I don't think he gives it a go. Trey McBride got put in concussion protocol in the fourth quarter of Sunday's game, and he is still not practicing as of Wednesday. You know, there's like 5 steps he has to clear. A couple years ago, it was pretty much unheard of if you got put in concussion protocol for you to clear for Sunday's game. So you're pretty much out a week. I would be prepared for that if you're a Trey McBride owner. Hope that he comes back, but I doubt that he makes it out of protocol before Sunday's game. We'll just have to watch and see. Deebo Samuel, calf, did not practice Wednesday. Shanahan said last week he expected him to be out for at least a couple weeks, so I would not be shocked if he missed this week and maybe came back next week. Devontae Smith in concussion protocol from his game this past week, did not participate in the walkthrough Wednesday. Like we just talked about with McBride, there's 5 steps to the protocol. Very hard to come back within a week, so just keep an eye on that. Cooper Kupp is working with strength and conditioning staff on the side Wednesday. He's no longer wearing a cast, which is good considering that he was wearing a cast on his ankle before. So I mean, he's already been ruled out for week 4, so he won't play this week, but just keep an eye on that just to make sure that nothing else happened. But it's good to see him back, getting it going. He should be back, hopefully. Maybe next week with him already working on conditioning and strengthening. Kenneth Walker was inactive this Sunday. We do not have an update as of this week, but they said he was doubtful before. I mean, given the fact that he was just doubtful, there's probably a chance that he could come back this week. So keep an eye on his practice schedule. Puka Nacua on the IR. One second. The computer froze. Sorry, guys. He remains on the IR, but he is working on the side at practice already with a compression sleeve on his legs. So that's good news. So that might mean that he might come back when first available. So keep an eye on that situation, but he's still on the IR as of right now. Chris Godwin was limited due to a neck injury. He was limited. They're just watching his reps. He'll play. Let's see, Tank Dell. Now that one, he had wrist. From what I read, he had a wrist, hand, and rib injury. He's labeled day-to-day. He sat out practice Wednesday. They're calling it chest injury, but they said rib injury after the weekend. But they said pretty much he's just sore after he had a big hit to his ribs during the game. So keep an eye on that, but monitor his practice schedule just in case. Jaden Reed for Green Bay with a calf quad injury was limited Wednesday. I expect him to play with him already being limited this week. Evan Ingram, who ended up getting ruled out last week with that hamstring injury, did not practice Wednesday. So it would not be a surprise to me if he does not play this weekend with him not practicing Wednesday and that hamstring injury being kind of fresh right before the game last week. I'd expect him probably be off at least one more week. Keenan Allen with that heel injury was limited at practice Wednesday. That's good news for him to be limited this early in the week. Keep an eye on that because apparently whatever he's got going on keeps flaring up on him. But they said they are hopeful that he will be able to return to the field this weekend. So just kind of keep an eye on his practice regimen there. Jordan Love, somebody that was expected to miss multiple weeks, thought he had a chance to come back last week, ended up not playing last week, but he was limited at practice on Wednesday, said he was pretty close to playing this past Sunday. I fully expect Jordan Love to come back this weekend. Jerome Ford popped up on an injury report, did not practice for a knee injury on Wednesday, but they said they're just managing this knee injury to begin the week. He's got a couple more days to get some practice and keep an eye on it, but I think Jerome Ford will go. They just realize he's the only productive back they have in that backfield, and they're trying to keep him healthy. And then we have Austin Eckler, who ended up getting knocked out of the game Monday night with a concussion, and he has already been ruled out for this weekend. David Njoku, who has been out pretty much since week one, is not practicing still on Wednesday with his ankle injury. I mean, if he's not practicing on Wednesday already and he's been out since week one, it's not really that good news. So I would not expect him to be back this week. Nick Chubb got a good report. He has been doing well, is what Stefanski said. They're going to evaluate him next week to see kind of where he is and have a guesstimate on when he can return. Jordan Addison, with this ankle injury, there's been just crazy because he didn't practice at all last week after he practiced the week before. This week, practiced on Wednesday. He should have a chance to come back if he's practicing this soon, but keep an eye on that. Raheem Mostert ended up getting ruled out for Sunday's game with a chest injury. There's been no new update. Jaylen Warren with his knee injury did not practice Wednesday. He had an MRI, said Tuesday they're unsure if he's going to be able to play Sunday, so I would not count on that. That kind of gives Najee Harris a little bit of a boost. Jonathan Brooks is in the final stages of his recovery. If Jonathan Brooks is out there, guys, I did not lift him on the well, I kind of did list him, but we'll talk about him later. But if he's out there, somebody dropped him, pick up Jonathan Brooks, guys, because when he comes back, this Carolina team could be better than we thought with him in that lineup. And then Dalton Schultz was limited on Wednesday, and that's pretty much going to round out all our injury news and concerns for this week coming up. And then I'll try to update those a little bit more on the Start Sit Sleeper pod. All right, let's go ahead and get started on the waiver wire picks at quarterback for week 4 coming up. And number one's got to be Sam Darnold, guys. I mean, through 4 weeks, he's QB4. 31.24 points this last week if you're in a 6-point per touchdown league. And this week he's going to be at Green Bay. Kind of a tough matchup. They've got I think it's 7 interceptions so far through 3 games this year, but he's got the weapons. He's got the offensive coordinator. He's got the offensive line. All of these are key for good quarterback play. And I mean, he's only owned in 16.3% of leagues. And even if you have a good quarterback but maybe struggling right now, pick him up and start him until that stud quarterback gets to go. And like Anthony Richardson's got a terrible matchup this week. He'll probably be on my sit list for my sit category just with how he has played. And with the matchup this week against Pittsburgh, Sam Darnold, somebody, all 3 of these guys I'm about to talk about, really 4, are somebody that I will start over them. But Sam Darnold's number 1 for me. I think he's got rest of season value as a quarterback there, and could be playing himself into a new extension of a contract there. I mean, if they keep winning games in Minnesota with Sam Darnold at the helm, there's no reason for them to think that they could bring J.J. McCarthy along slowly. And the Sam Darnold era of the Minnesota Vikings could be underway, kind of like Geno Smith did in Seattle. It's a very similar situation. Came in kind of a bridge quarterback and then ended up winning the job and the management over there. And now Geno Smith's the starting quarterback for Seattle until who knows when. So I like him a lot. And speaking of Geno Smith's number 2 guy for me, coming 27.8% owned. He's going to be at Detroit this week in a dome and probably a high scoring game with Detroit and Seattle's offenses going each other. He only had like 19.36 fantasy points last week, and that's in 6 point per touchdown league. So, pretty average, but he's QB 10 on the season. But his floor has been like 19 points this season so far. So, like, he's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks so far this season. And if that's one thing you want, especially this year with all the inconsistency in fantasy players, is consistency. And Geno is giving you that. And in this offense, with his weapons and his rushing upside of about 5 rushes or so per game, I mean, he's really got a solid ceiling with a safe floor. And that's what you want in your quarterback in fantasy. And then number 3 for me is going to be Justin Fields. Talk about a rushing floor. I mean, the guy rushes at least 6-7 times a game, if not more. He's owned in 24.1% of fantasy leagues starting right now. As long as he's starting, obviously he should be owned and probably started in most leagues because of his rushing ability, and he's getting a little bit more comfortable in this offense and is getting fairly efficient. Had 26.4 points last week. He's got Indianapolis at Indianapolis this week, whose secondary has not been its usual self. Normally they're a pretty decent secondary, but this year they've been struggling. Their defense in general has been struggling. So I don't see him giving up this role anytime soon to Russ Wilson unless for some reason he gets hurt or starts to struggle. But I mean, they're 3-0 with Justin Fields starting. And if they're winning, I don't see them giving the ball back to Russell Wilson. There's just no need because it's all about winning, honestly, in the NFL. And if your quarterback that's leading you is doing that, even though if it's on the chops of the defense, because their defense is one of the best in the league and maybe the best in a long time. But he's still got that safe floor of the rushing. He got a red zone rushing touchdown, which tells me, and it was schemed for, like it was not impromptu. So it tells me they're scheming for him to get rushing touchdowns in the red zone, which you'd love to see from a quarterback. The Colts this week, they just gave up 23.32 points to Caleb Williams, who's been terrible this year, and 363 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, like Justin Fields a lot this week. And then last but not least, Daniel Jones, man. I know it's crazy because everybody's like ready to burn his jersey and kick him out of the state of New York. And then now all of a sudden he comes out and he's looking like a world beater. This offensive line's playing a lot better, but he's on 6.1% of fantasy leagues this week. He's getting Dallas, whose defense, who everybody thought was going to be something special, ends up not really looking so hot. And last week he had 23.44 fantasy points. He's had at least 22 points in the last 2 weeks. Dallas's D's been struggling mightily. Neighbors is emerging as an elite wide receiver, like a top 10 stud, like a lot of us thought he could be. It took him a couple games to get there, and Daniel Jones is just feeding him the ball. And if you have a stud like that, he can make your quarterback really relevant. And Wan'Dale Robinson's helping out a pretty good bit, and Devin Singletary. I mean, this team's going to be a little bit better than what we thought. I definitely don't think they're a bottom of the barrel offense by any means, especially if their offensive line stays healthy and continues to block like they're doing. And he has had at least 5 rushes in all 3 games this year. And he normally throws it, sprinkles in like a rushing touchdown here and there each year. So I like Daniel Jones a pretty good bit, pretty much until he stops being productive or the offensive line breaks down. But he's a great streaming option and possibly somebody to start over, one of those stud quarterbacks that's struggling. So I like that a lot. Now we're going to roll right on into our running backs. And these are pretty much just dart throws. A lot of these guys are just kind of either backups or guys that we've seen get opportunity that could increase in their opportunity. None of them are really just studs going forward that we know of. But number one's got to be Bucky Irving coming in last week with only 11.4 points. He's got 32. He's on the 32.8% of leagues. He's going up against Philadelphia at home this week. So kind of a tough Russian matchup, but his snap count still wasn't as high as what everybody's thinking compared to his production. But Irving was far more efficient with his touches and way more involved in the plays when he was in there and given more opportunities when he was in there on the field. Now, Todd Bowles has come out and said that Bucky Irving has earned more playing time and more work. So that's not good news for Rachaad White owners. Honestly, every league I got him in, I'm trying to package him and ship him somewhere. I'm just worried that this is going to end up being a 50-50 timeshare. And then if Rachaad White gets hurt, it could be a Bucky Irving show taking over from then on. But at least right now we're looking at heading toward a timeshare, and with an injury, it could be a takeover, or if White starts turning the ball over or something like that. So Bucky Irving's number one. Number two is going to be Braylon Allen for the Jets. Last week only 9.8 points, but Braylon Allen is like top 10 in efficiency rushing metrics for just about every important metric there is for a running back. Braylon Allen is in top 10 of that, like tackles, like breaking tackles, yards after contact, like, I mean, everything. He is up there. I mean, I don't know I don't know who the Jets running back recruiter is, but the dude ain't getting paid enough. You could pull Brees Hall out of a draft, then you pull Braylon Allen out of a draft, and we're looking at two like stud wide running backs. And Braylon Allen, the only reason he ain't getting more playing time is because Brees Hall's ahead of him. And he's probably the most valuable handcuff in football this time, because if Brees Hall goes down, Braylon Allen is hands down top 10, maybe top 5 running back. And I know that's crazy to say, but with the way that New York Jets check the ball down to running backs, I mean, Braylon Allen should be owned in almost all leagues because of his value if Brees Hall goes down, but he's also getting 10 to 12 touches a game, and he's involved in the passing game. So like Braylon Allen a lot, if he's out there, I definitely go pick him up. He's not somebody you really start, maybe a flex start at bye weeks right now, if he gets a little bit more involved, but definitely somebody that should be owned. Carson Steele coming in at number 3. He could have been higher on this list, but he doesn't really get involved in the passing game. And unless you get a touchdown with Carson Steele, you're probably looking at like a flex play at best. This past week, 8.4 fantasy points because he had like 16 rushes for 84 yards, and he had, I think, 1 catch for 0 yards or something like that. Or I can't remember what exactly it was, but either way, only 8.4. He's on a 57.8% league, so he's probably pretty much all nabbed up. But he is the lead rusher in this Kansas City Chiefs backfield, and he led the way. Okay, there we go, 17 for 72 and 1 catch. So I mean, fairly efficient, not great, but he played 62% of the snaps. And if he gets a touchdown, he sneaks in that RB2 category. If he doesn't, he's probably in the flex play. You're looking at 8 to 10 points as his floor in this offense. That's without a touchdown. And that's Carson Steele at number 3. Number 4 is going to be Roschon Johnson for me. This guy every year comes into the season, doesn't get opportunity, playing third fiddle for Chicago 2 years in a row. And then all of a sudden, 3 games in, their guys in front of them are being productive. They bring in Roschon out of nowhere, comes in and gets 10.2 fantasy points. He's only owned in 0.8% of fantasy leagues. This week he gets the Rams, whose defense is super banged up, and really team in general is banged up, and their defense is struggling. But Roschon has emerged as the most efficient running back in this backfield currently, rushing and pass catching. Swift has just looked not great, and Roschon just pretty much took over the passing role for the running backs in this game, and they seem to be giving him a chance to see what he can do. And if he keeps producing and out producing Swift and being way more efficient, I could really see this turn into a 50-50 split, or Roschon just taking over, because they gave Swift a contract to come in there, but it's not no crazy amount of money. Like, it ain't nothing where they won't be like, well, you're going to get 20% of the carries or touches, and then Roschon's going to get 80 or 70, 30. I could definitely see that. But that's number 5 for me. And then, number 4, and then number 5 is going to be Rico Dowdle, 37.3% owned at New York Giants this week. This is Thursday night, so it's tonight. I'm recording on Thursday, late this week. But he is the preferred passing downs back for this Dallas offense. Their defense is not living up to the hype. They're playing from behind in several games, so he's getting more opportunity in the passing game. Their offensive line is just struggling big time right now in run blocking, like huge. It is really tough for them run blocking right now, which is creating a lot of efficiency problems for their running backs, and they're searching for answers. And right now, Rico Dowdle is the most efficient running back in this backfield. And each week we've seen his snap count increase and his touches increase. And I think he's just slowly emerging as the guy they want him to be. And I think you need to pick him up before he has a blow-up game, and that blow-up game could be tonight against the Giants. So I hope that, if you looked at the graphic and you had the space on your bench to stash somebody, I think Rico Dowdle could be somebody. And with bye week starting next week, he could be somebody you're slipping into your RB2 because you're in a bind. So I like Rico Dowdle there at number 5. And then last but not least, he's not really a number 6 or nothing, but I talked about him earlier, Jonathan Brooks. Stash him. He's owned in like 65% of leagues. If he was dropped, or if he's dropped after waivers cleared, pick him up. he could be back in week 5 ahead and leading the rushing. Now, Chuba Hubbard had a great week this past week with Andy Dalton, but from what every analyst and every person, Jonathan Brooks was taken in the second round of this draft, the first running back drafted in this draft with a torn ACL, and Carolina knew he was not going to be able to start the season. Like, they drafted him very highly. They think that just shows that's a testament to the talent that he has and his ability. So I think if they drafted Jonathan Brooks that high, when he gets back and he's up to speed, he will be a key part of this offense. And he could be somebody like a solid RB2 down the stretch. And with the way Dalton's commanding this offense and Dave Canales running the show, I mean, we could be talking about low end RB1, with his opportunity. So pick up Jonathan Brooks, stash him. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but he's going to be a lot more valuable than some of these other guys that I talked about ahead in the future. So likes Jonathan Brooks a lot there. Now on to our wide receivers, or the AKA crapshoot of the segment, because there's just no telling who's gonna emerge. But this week we have a clear number one person right now because of injuries on his team. Juwan Jennings from San Francisco, wide receiver, comes in, started the season pretty much as the third option at wide receiver. With Brandon Ayuk coming back and Deebo Samuel ahead of him, and really like the fourth or fifth option in the passing game behind Kittle and McCaffrey. And the next thing you know, McCaffrey's down. He never really gets off and starts, and then Kittle goes down with an injury. Deebo Samuel goes down with an injury. Brandon Ayuk has looked like a shell of himself from last year. And next thing you know, Juwan Jennings is out there looking like the number one wide receiver in the league. With the amount of volume he's getting, and he goes for 12 targets for 11 catches for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure, I believe he is like wide receiver 6 on the season with 1 game under his belt like that. But no, he actually had a pretty decent week 1 also. I think he had like 5 targets for 50 yards or 60 yards. And so he had a pretty decent week 1. Week 2 was pretty non-existent. But week 3, he went off with a lot of opportunity. So he's owned at 36.2% leagues. He's going up against New England Patriots this week, which used to be a daunting task, especially for wide receivers, but this year has not been that great. And he's really just turned into a favorite target of Brock Purdy's, which is extremely important. If you want to be successful in fantasy football, you want to be a favorite target of the quarterback. So I think Deebo Samuel is going to be out at least 1 more week. Now, George Kittle did practice limited this week, but with his history of hamstring injuries, they could be a little bit more cautious, especially since they pulled off a win this past week. And Brock Purdy they're pretty much all in the back of Brock Purdy. And I need to apologize to Brock Purdy because I said sit him, and I just didn't think he could carry the team. But man, he stepped up in a big way and has really delivered and carried this team with all their injuries. So my bad, Brock Purdy. You're a lot more efficient, a lot more productive than I thought you would be, missing all these weapons. And maybe that's a testament to you. Maybe that's a testament to Kyle Shanahan and this offense in general. But either way, Juwan Jennings is set up for another good week. And I mean, probably at least a wide receiver too. So if you're hurting a wide receiver this week, definitely somebody to plug in and play if you had a chance to pick him up, because he probably got waived in most leagues. And but he's at least a flex play, if not a wide receiver too, for sure. And bye week start next week, he could definitely be worth plugging in for a bye week, because if Brock Purdy and him have a connection, I mean, there's no reason to think he could supplant Brandon Ayuk, especially if Ayuk keeps playing and performing the way he is, because him and Purdy just don't seem like they're on the same page right now. And they're going to get the ball to people that can get open and that Purdy can get the ball to. And I think Jennings is that guy right now in San Francisco. Number 2 is going to be Khalil Shakir for Buffalo. On the 54.3% of fantasy leagues. He's got to be at Baltimore this week, which used to be not a great matchup. Well, ends up being a pretty good matchup for wide receivers now. And because their run defense is a lot better than their pass defense. And last week, he had 19.2 fantasy points, 6 catches for 6 targets, 6 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. has been extremely efficient this year, has caught every target Josh Allen has thrown to him. And if you don't think Josh Allen notices that he catches everything he throws his way, you are mistaken, my friend, because each week his targets and catches have increased every week, and he also has 2 touchdowns so far this year for a wide receiver. That is pretty big, and Buffalo's offense is looking like it's back, and Shakir seems to be Allen's safety blanket and maybe his number one target in this offense. And the fact that he's under 60% owned is crazy. So, I mean, really, with his volume right now, Khalil Shakir is a low end wide receiver, too, with upside. And then I heard the other day that Keon Coleman is in Sean McDermott's doghouse because he can't show up for, I guess, meetings or practice or appointments or whatever on time. So he didn't even get but 1 target, 1 catch because he sat out a lot of the game last game. So Khalil Shakir is on the up. And if you get the opportunity, pick him up and plug him in at least at your flex. And with bye weeks coming up, he is a solid fill in for bye weeks. Number three's got to be Andre Yoshivas. It looks like Sivas, but it's Yoshivas. Owned in 7.1% of fantasy leagues, the third wide receiver pretty much for the Bengals. This week's going to be at Carolina. Last week, with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase playing, 7 targets, 5 catches for 52 yards and touchdown. Yes, I know T. Higgins is back, but I think Osavash is going to be involved in this offense regardless. And after I watched the game against Washington on Monday night, he is essentially the new Tyler Boyd that is much more talented and much more athletic. They ran specific red zone looks for Osavash because he's like 6'3", 6'4", 220-something pounds. He's a big wide receiver. They ran specific plays for him in the red zone to get him open, and he caught one of those touchdowns. I really think he's just a super high-end wide receiver handcuff with flex value right now. But if Chase or Higgins goes down and miss more time, the connection between Yosavash and the opportunity is going to increase. And I mean, I think I know at the beginning of the year Higgins was out. He didn't look that great. I even dropped him on several of my teams. But after watching the chemistry grow during the game and him kind of get his experience and his gumption back in the game, I mean, I really could see Yosavash being a factor down the stretch with Joe Burrow in this offense, especially with the defense struggling to stop offenses and them having to play from behind. So there should be more opportunity in the pass game. But and then also with Chase and Higgins, injury history and the contract issues for both of them. I mean, Yosavash, he has a solid chance to be a very productive wide receiver. He's only on 7% of leagues. I really think he could be somebody that you're going to wish you had on your bench later on and somebody you can play, especially in bye-week fill-ins. Number 4 for me is going to be Tutu Atwell. And actually, I'd probably swap 4 and 5. So if, you can say Tutu Atwell 4, but I'd probably say Wan'Dale Robinson would be 4, but I'm going to talk about him next since I got Tutu Atwell pulled up right here. But he's only owned in 1.9% of fantasy leagues. He's going to be at Chicago this week. DeMarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Tyler Johnson, we're all like trying to figure out who's the next up at the Rams. And man, Tutu Atwell just comes out of nowhere and gets 75% of the snaps, where Johnson and Whittington only got like 50. And honestly, were tripping over themselves during the game and just didn't look that great. Tutu Atwell had 13.3 fantasy points, 5 targets, 4 catches for 93 yards, was clearly explosive. He's pretty much the Greg Dortch of the Rams, and he's got more opportunity and, a better coach and offensive coordinator. But he was used in the game plan to spark the offense in this game. The Rams ended up pulling out a win with what they performed last week. And this week they were at Chicago. Pretty tough task for wide receivers. So I think Atwell will probably get the third, maybe the second or the third cornerback on the field, which would be great for him. But he's a big play waiting to happen, just like some of the other guys in this offense. But it looks like he's getting more of the opportunity. And they have a good chance for a big play when they get the ball in his hands. And Sean McVay's no dummy. He's gonna see that, especially on the tape. And I think he could be somebody that could have some more opportunity until Cooper Kupp gets back out there or Puka Nacua. So Tutu Atwell at number 4, and then number 5, or swap them, like I said, Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants. He plays tonight. Owned in 14.8% of fantasy leagues, but man, has he been getting a ton of targets. This week, he plays at home against Dallas. Last week, he had 13.1 fantasy points, 8 targets, 7 catches for 61 yards. He's wide receiver 18 in terms of targets so far this season. 18, and he's the second wide receiver on his team. But you know who number 1 in targets is? Malik Neighbors. So you know what that tells me when you got those two guys that are that high? They are focused on getting the ball in their wide receivers' hands, especially these two playmakers. And I think Wan'Dale Robinson could easily be a low-end wide receiver two flex play for the rest of the season, and especially during bye weeks. And he's ahead of Tyreek Hill on targets, guys, and just behind Stephon Diggs. He's only playing 60% of the snaps so far. Imagine if he gets out there, if they start getting him out there on the field even more, this production goes up. Like I talked about earlier, the Giants' offensive line's looking a lot better with Jones. And I mean, they just have a connection between Neighbors and Robinson. This offense is moving the ball well, and they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts because our defense is not that great. So it should be a lot of either high scoring, like, where they're going to have to score a lot to stay ahead, or they're going to have to score to come from behind. But I think he's at least a solid flex play already, and could have a chance to be a wide receiver too, especially if he gets a touchdown. So, and that's going to round out my wide receivers, and jumping right on into the tight ends. And, a barren wasteland of despair is what I've always called this. And it is so true this year. And I thought last year was bad, but man, this year we are just truly chasing points. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're just truly chasing points this year. But a nice little nugget for y'all. No tight end has more than one receiving touchdown so far this year. None. And another little nugget that I heard yesterday on a podcast, Fantasy Focus, shout out to Phil Yates for throwing this one at me. But you know how many tight ends have more than 8 points in every game so far this year? 3 games. All right. All the tight ends of the league, 3 games, all the studs out there, 3 games. Do you know how many have had more than 8 points in every game? 0. That is correct. No tight end has had more than 8 points in every game so far this year. So, there's really just been no clear-cut studs truly this year. Now, we know some will emerge and some will kind of get back in, the offenses will get back on track. But right now, we're just searching for, whatever points and opportunities that we can find. And last week, those points and opportunities went to my number 1 tight end. That's Cole Kmet, owned in 26.3% of fantasy leagues. He had 11 targets, 10 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. Good for 25.7 fantasy points. This week, he's going up against the Rams, whose defense, like I just talked about, not doing that great this year. And he's tight end 4 so far through the season. After this one performance, it moved him all the way up tight end 4. He was like 18 or something, and then now he's up at tight end 4. He's almost been completely non-existent in this offense, and then all of a sudden, they start letting Caleb Williams throw the ball 50 times a game. I mean, it looked like they were just through their prior game plan for the season in the trash and said, we're just going to let Caleb Williams throw the ball a lot. And if they do that, Cole Kmet has been a true big-time beneficiary of that. And so he erupts with this major stat line. And we knew from the past that Cole Kmet is extremely talented and athletic, has the ability. He just was lacking the opportunity whenever they don't give it to him. But he's if he keeps getting this opportunity and starts to, he's way too valuable to pass up on, especially in this tight end market right now. Even if it's like this was a 1 week wonder for right now, he's still somebody that has the capability of putting up these stat lines if he gets that opportunity. And I think with as bad as tight end has been, if you're looking for a tight end, then you can't afford to pass him up and not give him a shot. So, and honestly, after this, he's ranking 6th in targets for tight end so far this year, and he's 3rd in interceptions now. So I like Cole Kmet a lot. I picked him up in several of my leagues. And I mean, if you're streaming tight ends, just trying to find the next guy, I think you could do worse than betting on Cole Kmet. Number 2 for me is going to be Tyler Conklin, owned at 27.8% of fantasy leagues. This week he's going up against Denver. Last week he had 6 targets, 5 catches for 93 yards for 14.3 fantasy points. We saw Rodgers and Conklin finally get on the same page, started to show some chemistry, and really the Jets offense in general really started to be coming to life and turning into what we thought it would be at the beginning of the season. Conklin's volume in this offense going forward is going to be really depend on him and Rodgers' chemistry and their relationship, because we all know if Rodgers gets mad at you for dropping a pass or missing a block or something, then you're in the doghouse and good luck at getting any attention from him then. But I mean, right now with what I've seen from this past week, I think Conklin's looking at low end tight end 1 categories. And if he gets a touchdown with some of the production and opportunity he's got, I mean, we're talking about top 5 tight end with a touchdown, and Rodgers is not afraid to go to his tight end or a big playmaker, like a big wide receiver in the red zone, throw into contention. So I like Tyler Conklin going forward. I think he's somebody that could have a little bit more of a stable floor than what we've been seeing so far this year at tight end. And then number 3 for him is going to be Noah Fant. Owned in 4.8% fantasy leagues at Seattle. He's going to be at Detroit this week, but last week, 12 fantasy points, 6 targets, 6 catches for 60 yards. Fant's always had the ability and the athleticism. He was a big-time prospect coming out of Iowa. And then he went to Seattle, and they had like 9 tight ends. That was just a little exaggeration, but really they had 3 or 4 that they played in a rotation constantly, and Fant was in that and just kind of stuck in that cog, but he's always had that ability to be a great pass catcher. Just no offensive coordinator and Pete Carroll ever gave him the chance. But now with their new offensive-minded head coach and coordinator, and with hopefully they see his ability and they start to utilize that in the passing game more, he could be somebody that emerges as a very efficient and productive tight end. So it's starting to look like he's getting more of that opportunity. It's another one of those where you kind of want to get him before he gets really big, because if not, the way tight ends are, people are going to be throwing money in the auction leagues and using their high waiver picks to try to get somebody that's stable in the tight end game right now. So this week, I like him a lot at Detroit in what we think could be a shootout. I think Fant gets some opportunity. He's 11th in targets so far at tight end this year, and so that means you're starting to see more opportunity for him. So I like Noah Fant a lot this year, or really this point going forward from what I've seen. So he could be somebody that could help you out, especially this week. And then streaming defenses, man, is another tough week. 2 of the best defenses in the league going at each other that have good offenses, and that's Minnesota at Green Bay. And really, either one of those defenses could have been on here because they're both putting up a lot of good defensive numbers. And like as far as turnovers, sacks, tackles for loss, not allowing very many points. I mean, both defenses are great, but I'm really hedging on the side of Minnesota's right now. They're the number 1 defense so far in fantasy this year. They're only owned at 20.4% of fantasy leagues. They essentially have shut down San Francisco and Houston offenses with at least 5 sacks in every game they've had so far this year. They create a total of 6 turnovers, as well as 6 of those being interceptions. So they have a total of 6 turnovers, 6 interceptions. I expect Malik Willis to possibly start. If not, Jordan Love will start, but he's not going to be 100% yet. So if they start Jordan Love at 100, not at 100%, he's getting pressure on him. He's not going to be as mobile as he normally is. And this Minnesota defense could really take advantage of his lack of mobility, getting pressure on him, causing him to make some mistakes, possibly increase their chance to get some turnovers and sacks. If not, if he gets injured, then they throw Malik Willis in there at the last minute. And if he hadn't been game planned for all week, that could be a whole nother just issue for them right there. So like Minnesota's defense a lot. They could be a set it and forget it for the rest of the season until they hit their bye week if they keep producing at this high level. So like Minnesota a lot. Then Houston versus Jacksonville. Houston's defense owned at 30.9% of fantasy leagues. Honestly, after struggling last week against Minnesota, Jacksonville and they've really struggled against everybody so far. But I think Houston's defense struggled against Minnesota last week, but Jacksonville has struggled against every defense so far. So Houston's defense at home, I think they get back on track against Jacksonville, who gave up 5 sacks and 2 turnovers at Buffalo last week. And now they go on the road to Houston, who I think will probably pay attention to that tape and adopt some of the same approaches to attack Jacksonville. And they just have not been able to stop any defense from getting to their quarterback, and they have not stopped turning the ball over all year. Jacksonville has given up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing DSTs so far this year, depending on your scoring. But either way, they're going to be pretty high up there in how many points they've given up. And Houston's at home. D'Amico Ryans is a great defensive coach. So I really think Houston's going to be able to capitalize on Jacksonville's struggles and probably have a decent chance at putting up some solid points this week. And that's going to round out my stream of defenses. And then last but not least, the kickers, who have been putting up a ton of points this year, but all these are still top 10 options. And still, Blake Grupe's number one for me for New Orleans at Atlanta has been solid, only owning 23% of fantasy leagues. He's the number 6 kicker so far this year. Number 2's got to be Matt Prater. There was a ton of people on his bandwagon last week, and he produced. This week, he's going to be at home against Washington, who we've seen put up a lot of points last week, and I think this could be a high-scoring game. Both Washington and Arizona have been able to move the ball well, and Matt Prater's been the number 8 kicker so far this year. And then last but certainly not least, Chris Boswell, who kicks in Pittsburgh. I'm not the biggest fan of those type of areas that can be windy and cold, but this week he is kicking at Indianapolis. He's owning 21.4% of fantasy leagues. He's the number 2 kicker so far this year because he's had such high volume and opportunity. So those are 3 solid kicking options to stream this week if you're trying to move on from Chase McLaughlin, who really stunk it up last week, or anybody else that really hadn't been producing for you so far this year. But that's going to round out this Waiver Wire podcast. I really appreciate everybody listening. Thank you for all the people, all our supporters, all our sponsors. Please support them. Mimi's, Big Reed, Crown Detailing. Thank you. Support those guys. Please like, subscribe, follow, share our podcast. Just and give us any feedback that you want to hear more of. That you don't want to hear more of. Pay attention to the graphics. Clay's going to try to get graphics out on time for a lot of our waiver wires and our start sit sleepers each week. That way, if for some reason the podcast is late getting out, you at least know who we're looking at, and then when the podcast comes out, you can know why. So that's what we're trying to do. But that's gonna round it out for this episode of Waiver Wire Week 4. We appreciate everybody listening, and y'all keep chasing that trophy. We'll see y'all later on this week.
This ain't how it's supposed to be. It should be just you and me.